We are live. Welcome to Boilers Extra. I'm Nathan Baird from the Indy Star.
Sam King from the Journal and Courier in Mackey Arena, where Purdue today survives, I think is the right word to use, 68-64 against an Oregon team that is 1-11 in the Big Ten, but did get a boost from getting its best player back, Nate Biddle, who returned and scored 23 points and almost was a difference in what was nearly an upset of Purdue. But Fletcher Loyer, second game in a row, kind of is the hero of the Boilermaker victory.
Yeah, this game, one of the first things that we talked about when we hooked up after the Maryland game, I was there, you were back here in West Lafayette, was how Matt Painter had seemed so unimpressed with that 30-point win, basically saying like, well, we'll see what happens when we don't hit shots. I think he worried that maybe it would look a little bit like today when they go 5 of 18 from 3, and Oregon didn't make shots either, and Oregon turned the ball over also. But the fact that Purdue had one of its worst turnover games of the season and compounded with how many shots it was missing, it just left the door open for what Rutgers or Oregon was then able to do late in this game and really pushed Purdue to the brink. It was a 3-point Oregon lead with like 5 minutes to go, something like that. They were still ahead by 1 as it counted down under a minute, and Loyer hit that shot from like right here about, I don't know, 26, 27 feet. Just a near, like they're teetering on the brink of disaster, basically, because they've got 3 Big Ten losses. There are a few teams ahead of them that have either 1 or 2. They're coming up on a stretch of the season where they play Nebraska, which is one of those teams that only has 2 coming up. They play Michigan soon. They play Michigan State soon. They've got this really tough road trip to Iowa kind of sandwiched in the middle of all of that. But they control their destiny a little bit. They'll need some help. They've already only played they played the one game they'll play against Illinois. They need a lot of help against Illinois. But like sharing the Big Ten championship, I think it's probably only sharing it, is not outside the realm of possibility if you run the table. You lose today and it's gone. If they lose today, they would have no chance. So it's interesting that you talked about, like, this did feel like a survive in advance. It's kind of what I wrote for my insider for Indy Star after the game was this almost, you could look at this almost like, man, they really almost crapped their pants in the second round of the NCAA tournament, but they got through the weekend somehow, and now look what's ahead of them. They're going to have to play some of the best teams in the country, but if they keep winning, then good things can happen. That's how you could sort of look at what happened today.
Yeah, we probably took a similar approach. I said, the way that Purdue played today will cut it against Oregon. It won't cut it against Nebraska, Iowa, Michigan, Indiana, and Michigan State, which is its next 5 games. Indiana suddenly red hot. Obviously, Iowa already tested Purdue in Mackey Arena, and we know how good Michigan is. We know how good Nebraska is. Michigan State is always tough. That's always a slugfest. So you got through this one. Kind of to your point where Purdue didn't make shots. Jack Benter made a wing 3, or maybe it was a corner 3, I can't remember, with 9:15 to go. Purdue made 2 field goals the rest of the game. Boilermakers did go 10 of 12 from the line, a lot of that coming late, but benefited from being in the bonus with more than 14 minutes left in the second half. Matt Painter said, we were aware of that. We wanted to attack once we got to that situation, but we wanted to use it to our advantage. Basically, you don't want to just get guys to the foul line to get them to the foul line. You want to make sure you're going to capitalize and get points when you do that. So from that Benter 3, you get Trey Kaufman-Renn made a shot at the rim with 3.5 minutes to go to cut it to 1, I think. And then you get Loyer's shot with 50 seconds left. That was it. Not a great shooting performance. Purdue shot 56+% in the first half, though, and then shot 35% in the second half. 14 turnovers. Did a lot of things that kind of shot itself in the foot. That's why I asked Matt Painter after the game, was this a situation where you put yourself on the brink of vulnerability, or is this a game where you look at and say, Purdue really played well in the final few minutes when it had to crawl out of a hole and get a must-have victory?
Well, here's what fans probably aren't going to want to hear, but I think it's the most realistic thing to say, is that both of those things are a part of this team's identity. I don't believe that they are vulnerable to playing the way they did for the first 35 minutes or large stretches of that first 35 minutes, and that's who they are on every night. But it's in there somewhere. And when they don't make shots, they have not really found the correction. I can't think of, are there been any games where we've come in this year after the game and it's been like they won by 15 or 20, but still didn't make a lot of threes? And I don't know if mathematically that's off, but it doesn't seem like there have been a lot of comfortable wins against decent teams. And Oregon, with Nate Biddle back in the mix, is a decent team. I know they lost their 9th game in a row today, but he's one of the best big men in the Big Ten. He's one of the best rim protectors in the country. He makes a huge difference over what team Purdue was playing. And they knew he might come back, and they had prepared for it. But all of that is still part of who they are. They have not solved some of their defensive deficiencies enough that there isn't going to be some vulnerability there. However, what they did in the last 5 minutes is also part of this team's identity. And on those times where their backs are against the wall, if they have an answer to it, maybe you only need to do that once in March or April, and it changes the complexion of what you accomplish with the season. Like I said, it keeps them alive for the Big Ten conversation this week. That's not me saying, though, that they don't have to fix some of those other things. Like on the nights where they don't hit threes, like we just saw this 2 weeks ago against Illinois when they were hitting a bunch of threes, when they did a lot of things well. But when you leave yourself vulnerable on the boards, when you make turnovers at the wrong time, when you can't get defensive stops, when some of those things are not there for you, you can't create a vulnerability. And Illinois is a very good offensive rebounding team. So I'm not saying that Purdue failed in some way to create that opportunity, but they certainly didn't answer it. Today, against a team that was also much more vulnerable than Illinois, as much as Biddle helped, when you create, Oregon played a role in it defensively, but when you sort of create the opportunity with the turnovers that you commit and the points that they're getting going the other way, because they're not hitting threes, them getting out in transition was a big part of their offense today, working off of Purdue's turnovers, then that's how you set yourself up for those defeats. So I think it's sort of both. Like, it's great that they have the answer at the end. They need the answer at the end. They need all the little factors that went into that answer. But to even talk about championships in any realm, I do still think this team has to show a little bit more assurance in those first 35 minutes against teams that are better than Maryland.
Yeah, and the stretch that really stands out, and this has been a recurring theme throughout the season, Purdue is up, I think, 8 with a minute and a half, 2 minutes to go in the first half, and has a chance to really separate itself, get a big lead, go into halftime and feel good, and can maybe come out and put a team away early in the second half. Instead, Purdue gets a turnover that leads out to a fast break layup. Oregon ends up scoring 6 points in the final minute 47 and goes into halftime down 2 points. And it feels like a totally different situation. You saw, I don't know if people saw, but I saw that after Oregon made the last shot of the first half, Braden Smith just took the ball and heaved it down the other end of the court, kind of out of frustration for the way the half ended. And it's the end of first halves have really been something that's doomed Purdue or put Purdue in, difficult situations coming out of the locker room.
Yeah, Blake Widmer is chiming in on this same concept. Really got lucky squeaking out a victory today. Bad closeout to the first half, just like UCLA, Illinois, Indiana. I do not see us getting past Elite Eight at best. We are a mediocre team, no spark at all. Purdue's not a mediocre team. I would not say that Purdue is a mediocre team, but I do think Purdue is not summoning enough answers to things that have been. There are a couple of ways that they have not taken what was seen as a vulnerability before the season and improved enough on it. Or again, in specific instances like the Illinois game, they don't reward themselves on enough of their stops against an elite offensive team by getting the rebounds, or they commit the turnovers like they did today, or they don't. This team still has real problems being connected game to game defensively and communicating game to game defensively. You see it happen out on the floor. It wasn't a catastrophe today because they were playing a really bad three-point shooting team. And Oregon, I will give Purdue credit for what it did in the last few minutes, because I do think it defended – each guy kind of started defending their man better in those last couple of minutes. And Oregon was settling for a lot of threes. At the same time, the Fletcher Loyer three was immediately preceded by Wei Lin for I hope I'm pronouncing that right, for Oregon, missing a pretty wide open corner three that like Fletcher or Trayvon Marin closed out late on him, but that shot was there. He's just a bad 3-point shooter. He's a 26% 3-point shooter. So Purdue this is one of the games where Purdue, I think, ran the math on some of these matchups, and the right guys were taking threes for the most part against Oregon. I mean, Nate Biddle was 1 of 8 today from 3.
Made his first one.
Yeah, he made his first one and then missed 7 straight. Like, the right guys were shooting threes today for Oregon and missing them. And if Purdue just takes care of the ball better, it came into this game averaging 8 turnovers per game in Big Ten play.
Yeah.
In Big Ten play, but only 9.2 for the season, which I saw in Chris Foreman's notes was like the second. It's trending towards like the second lowest turnovers per game in program history, which is there's a long history here. So like one of the best teams in the country at it, and they come in today and just double it up. And I didn't really feel like it was all Oregon. Like and when Oregon did turn up that pressure in the second half, I thought you saw this team kind of just like get a little bit flat-footed. Like the reaction was, I thought, not a confident one. And I think that is something that a fan that like Blake is probably seeing that and saying that is one of the reasons why he's concerned.
Yeah. Listen, Purdue is still the same group of guys who went out and thumped Texas Tech and went out and thumped Auburn. But as of late, take the Maryland game out of the equation, there's a stretch dating back to probably even that Washington game on like January 7th since then, where there's probably a lot to be desired if you came into the season thinking that Purdue was without question one of the best 4 or 5 teams in the country. There's a lot of really good teams right now. I would say Purdue's in that mix. I would say even Purdue is still capable of winning a national title, but Purdue is still also capable of losing the second round of the NCAA tournament. There were some situations
maybe
today.
Not the second.
Like,
this wasn't an NCAA tournament team, I don't think, that Purdue played today. Even with Biddle back, like this was he had missed 5 games. By the way, it wasn't Blake that said the thing about the Elite Eight. It was Wiggle Room. Sorry about that. The icons all look the same. I got confused. So now we're straight on that. But like Oregon had lost 3 in a row, or 3 or 4 in a row before Biddle got hurt. Like they're 9-15 now. They were not a good team, even with Biddle. Like Shellstad getting hurt. Yeah. Like they've just been killed by injuries this year. I would still not call this a surefire, but it's probably better than it's a better team than some of the teams that you would play in NCAA tournament, right? Like better than a low major, even some of the mid majors that AQ.
The concern that I think that I take out of this is we've talked a lot about the lack of communication and how that's hurt Purdue. That was the case multiple times today. There were a couple of defensive switches where guys didn't communicate, and then you get 2 guys going with one guy and you leave a guy wide open. We both noted there was a point where Trey Kaufman-Wren was in the post, dribbling, backing his guy down. A defender just darts towards him. Nobody tells Trey. The ball gets swatted out of his hand, and Purdue, fortunately, the guy steps out of bounds chasing the loose ball. I can't remember which defender it was at this time, but that's something where you got to say, hey, he's coming, and Trey kicks the ball back out, and you get a wide open 3 look, or you get some ball movement out of that. Instead, you get the ball taken away from a guy backing a guy out of the post who has no idea that a second defender is coming to help on him. So Purdue's got to clean up the communication issues. That it's real easy at Maryland when you're up big, basically 10 minutes into that game, to feel good and to talk and be in the flow of things. It's a lot harder when it's a grind and you're struggling to beat a team that's got 1 win in conference play.
Well, frankly, it's also easier at Maryland because there's nobody there. Like it's not a Mackey Arena environment right now at Maryland, and maybe it will be again someday, but it is not right now. A couple of things that I think deserve to be said today too, to make sure that we're putting things in context. They're 5 of 18 from 3 today, but 0 of 8 from CJ Cox, Jakari Harris, and Omer Meyer. And Cox and Harris especially were getting open looks, and they're not falling. And those are guys who are all capable 3-point shooters, but are not Purdue's best 3-point shooters. They are not the guys with the kind of elite 3-point potential that Loyer and Smith have, and maybe even some of the other guys, obviously Liam Murphy, who doesn't play a lot. But so this was part of this was, if they come in at halftime, they're up 6 going into that last stretch that you mentioned. And if each of those guys had made one more 3, it's a 12-point game. And even when it was a 3-point game with 5 minutes to go, you can extrapolate that and say, but if Harrison and Cox had just made 1 3 each, and they were open and they were easy shots that just didn't fall, it's a 9-point game instead of 3. Like, that context is sort of important, but so is, when Oregon's not shooting well either. I really think it does get decided then. If they had lost this game, we'd be sitting here talking about how they turned the ball over so much and just gave Oregon a chance to get back into this.
Yeah, and credit where it's due too. I thought a boost came from Daniel Jacobson off the bench. He 3 for 3, had 4 rebounds, played 20 minutes, which there's been times where he's put up big numbers, but only maybe gets 10 minutes. Oscar Clough wasn't real effective on the boards. Didn't have, I think he had 3 points maybe. It allowed Jacobson, who was playing well, to get some extended minutes. And kind of out of the two of those guys, you get what you kind of hope for out of your center position. It was enough today because Jacobson had a couple of key plays. He got the dunk and the and one, which I thought was pretty huge. But yeah, you expect those 3 seniors, Trey Kaufman-Wren, Braden Smith, Fletcher Loyer, to play well almost every game. But you have to have other people complement those guys, especially with the 8-game stretch that Purdue has left in the regular season.
And I'm not trying to equivocate here. Purdue has to play better. This was not top to bottom a good game that Purdue played. But what is Purdue? Is Purdue a team that is in trouble if Oscar Clough doesn't play well, or for whatever reason, whatever is happening with him today in that matchup, or just with himself, or is the identity that Daniel Jacobson comes in and plays really well? Doesn't miss a shot from the field or the free throw line. Gets, I think, 4 rebounds. So, you could, on a 40-minute game, it's 18 and 8, right? Like, you're going to take that. He's not blocking shots right now, and nobody is, which I think is strange. Like, they averaged something like 3.7 blocks through their first 15 games.
Oregon also took 25 threes. So
Oregon did take a bunch of threes today, and Indiana took a large percentage of threes, and they've played some teams recently that are shooting a lot of threes. But they played some of them earlier this year. I don't know. I want to look deeper at that number because I just noticed it today. They haven't had more than 2 blocks as a team in any game for like a couple months now, which I don't know. I think Washington game was maybe the last one where they had more than 2. But yeah, I thought, the performance off the bench by Jacobson, the performance off the bench again by Jack Benter, who only doesn't even play 12 minutes, but he kind of stands out in your mind about coming in and making enough contributions that you win a game by 4 points that you might not otherwise have won.
Yeah, drew 2 offensive fouls again. He's apparently just, I wish there was a stat for offensive fouls drawn because he has to be up there. And when you look at the minutes played and then average out, how often he takes a charge or lures a opposing team to get an offensive foul call, it's phenomenal. It just feels like every game he's making a pivotal play defensively that forces a turnover because the other team gets an offensive foul call.
I'm kind of wondering, like, do the guys who foul a lot, I think it compounds because the officials expect them to get in foul trouble almost. And I'm wondering does the opposite work for him? Like, have officials on film and in games they've done seen him take enough things to get called to charge and he's getting the benefit of the doubt? Or is it going to swing back the other way at some point where the opposing coach is going to be like, hey, make sure you're watching number 14. Like, he's getting a lot of charge calls, but is he really getting there? Like, just keep an eye on it. And no, we'll see. But he's been great in that role. I joked something about, it's his 406th charge taken this year because nobody is keeping track of it, but it seems like one a game. Like, it seems like you can just count on one a game. Like, when is that going to happen? It's almost like you could do an over-under as you're all getting ready for your Super Bowl props. Like, what point of the game does Jack Bender take his charge?
Yeah. Long story short, Purdue got out of here with a win.
Yeah, so let's look ahead because what is coming up. Because I think this next stretch defines the regular season.
Yeah, this will determine where Purdue finishes in the Big Ten standings. What seed Purdue has come Selection Sunday. That's all, still very much up in the air, and you've got a chance to improve your seed with the stretch of games you have. You put some more losses on your resume here. You hurt your seed, and Purdue's, right now probably on that 3-4 seed line. That's dangerous territory, and not an easy second-round matchup if you can even get there. So, obviously, you want to be as high a seed as possible, but Purdue can't afford to kind of dip down more and then put itself up against teams that are more of the caliber that it's kind of struggled against here.
Yeah, I think some of that we've gotten so accustomed to almost like everything has to line up perfect so that Purdue can make its tournament run. And there's so many teams in NCAA history have made long tournament runs as a 3, 4, 5, 6 seed, right? Like teams do it. And I think there will be a team in Purdue history that does it at some point. It's all a matter of the matchups and how you're playing at that moment. So my thing recently, when you come through that 3-game losing streak, the thing I kind of kept harping on was more how is Purdue playing, like whether or not they're losing the games. I was talking about this with Mike Merritt from the AP as we were walking in today. It's like, all right, the UCLA game, there were issues in that game, but you lost a game on the road against a team that had been underachieving, had been challenged by its coach, who was coached by a really good coach. Like you were there and it just didn't come together. You lose at home to Illinois, and those other factors are what decided the game, the rebounding and stuff, but also the 46 points that one guy scored on a bunch of circus shots gave Illinois a huge margin for error in that game that they were able to use. So then it's really the Indiana game and the way they played against Indiana in terms of just effort and awareness and communication. Like it looked like they just didn't show up in a lot of ways for that game. And I think that was it, that coming on the end of that as the third in 3 losses was what really made it seem like something is really wrong with this team. And that might still be in some people's minds as of today. I really think, though, I'm looking at this next stretch. Excuse me. This next stretch, it doesn't matter how well you play. Like you can play very well relative to how you've played all season and still lose games in this coming stretch. This is where you either kind of, get it together and go out and take a championship or get yourself back into contention, or you don't. I mean, Nebraska, by now, you have to take them serious. This is a real team. Iowa gave Purdue a really good game here, and I just feel like where this game falls, like you go to Nebraska, you're flying home late Tuesday night, and then you're back on a plane on Friday for the game at Iowa. So you've just got the couple days in there. They're probably not taking any days. Can't really take days off. So you probably got a couple of practices in between. You go right back out to Iowa, which I just think that Iowa is doing good things this year. I think Ben McCollum has done good things in his first year there. They've got some legitimate players. And you can't then be looking ahead to the game that you have 3 days after that at home against Michigan, which some people think, and the numbers suggest, depending on what analytics you look at, might be the best team in the country. Like, that's your next 3 games. You got those 3 games in 8 days, and we'll find out something about where this team is, at least right now, in those 8 days. And I think that's how I would look at it. Again, you find a way to get through today. You almost stumbled and embarrassed yourself, if you want to look at it that way, but you just found a way to get through that round, and then now you're just playing NCAA tournament teams, and if you just keep beating them, it changes the complexion of your season and what you can get as far as a trophy at the end of the season.
Yeah, I wrote after that UCLA game when I was staying up until the wee hours of morning because of the West Coast. I thought Purdue played better in a lot of ways against UCLA and lost than it did 2 or 3 days earlier at USC where it won.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to point.
And that could very much be the case. Purdue could go play very well at Nebraska. It's a tough place to win. It's a really good team, and come away with a loss. You do have to keep that in perspective. And I think that, this team's ultimate goal is what happens in the NCAA tournaments. Would it love to win the Big Ten? Yes. Right now you're asking for a little bit of help on your side and some things to fall into place. But I think this team has been looking ahead almost because they were talking about national titles and coming back because this team could really do something all year long. Your hope is that it's locked in and everything is corrected and fixed as well as it's going to be fixed once you get to that March Madness tournament.
And again, don't forget that this same program a year ago lost 4 games in a row in February and then was still right there with the chance to beat Houston. And who knows what happens if you beat Houston. That might have been 2 Final Four trips in a row if they could then go on and beat Tennessee. Like it was right there in front of them. They were very close. That's the other thing to remember too, is that sometimes it comes down to you meet the moment in one game and it opens things up for you in March. So I think people are looking at this. I don't go as far as some of the naysayers who think that like this team is falling apart. I do think this team is on a potential path to not live up to its potential. I use potential twice in the same sentence. If it doesn't shore up some really important areas. But I mean, who thinks Purdue can't go to Nebraska and win? I think Purdue can beat Michigan at home. Like, I think it has the potential. We have seen Purdue go to Alabama and win. And Alabama's record is not as sparkling as some of the other best teams in the country because they play the toughest schedule in the country, basically. We saw them throttle the same Texas Tech team that's the only team to beat Duke and that also just beat up on Houston recently. Like, we've seen this team beat other really good. We saw this team almost beat Illinois when Illinois had a guy go for 46 points that was in some ways out of Purdue's control with some of the shots he was hitting. Like, there are reasons to still be optimistic about what this team can accomplish, but I also think that this team does still have to keep trending back in the right direction.
Yeah. We're kind of going long here, are we?
Yeah. I was going to try to get the Yats. It closes at 8. I don't think I'm going to make it. I don't think I'm going to make it. We're going to have to pick something else for dinner tonight.
Well, I just had a second turkey sandwich today, so hopefully that holds me off until actual dinner time. But, yeah, I thought it was a gut check moment for Purdue that answered the call when it had to. And kind of going back to what we were talking about 2 games ago, Matt Painter having faith in his guys, even when shots aren't going in. Fletcher Loyer, obviously, it helps that he hit 7 of 10 threes at Maryland, but that play at the end where he hit the go-ahead 3, there was a timeout call and a play designed for him to come out and hit that shot, and it got blown up a little bit. It was a little bit deeper of a 3 than they probably drew it up as, but it went in, it worked, and that's a guy that, just a couple games ago, a lot of people were like, you can't have him on the floor because he's killing your team.
I want to say this because I brought this number up a bunch, so I'm going to keep tracking it as the season goes along. This week, against teams that Purdue was supposed to beat and was heavily favored to beat, it's still like chopped about a whole point off of that adjusted defensive efficiency that I've been harping on all season. That like kind of tells whether a team probably is championship caliber or whether it would have to be an extreme outlier to win one. They're down to like 98.4. That really needs to be more like under 95 before I think that they belong in the same conversation as about 6 or 8 other teams right now as far as being among the best national championship contenders. But I also was here in 2014 when that team figured some things out after Christmas and became a different defensive team. I don't know that this team has that same kind of ceiling. It certainly doesn't have that same runway. We're down to 8 games left in the Big Ten. So it's going to have to do it in a more compressed timeline.
It also does not have probably that. CJ Cox is maybe a lockdown defender, Jakari Harris, but they're kind of combined to one. It doesn't have that Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year caliber type guy.
No, not really. And also that 2013-14, like you were starting A.J. Hammonds, who was that.
Right.
You had Raphael Davis, who was that. Those guys were both playing a lot of minutes for you. And Purdue's best defensive big plays the fewest minutes of the 3 bigs. Like they have vulnerabilities there that are just what they are. But I do think they need to address them better. I do think they have to more consistently assert themselves on the board. Get back to a place where you are really in these talent-equated games, doing a better job controlling the boards more consistently. And I think there are some offensive tweaks that have to be made too, because the 3-point shooting has now too much trended into too many games like this. So what do they have to do? They're not trying not to hit threes. They practice shooting. We see it happen. But are you re-examine things as far as who's getting those shots? I think is maybe a way to look at it, because when Fletcher Loyer shoots 10 threes and makes 7 of them, there's not many teams that are going to beat Purdue, I don't think. But when he only shoots 4 and makes 3, and then a lot of the other shots are going to the guys that can hit threes but are more, niche guys than the guy that you want to be heavy volume. Can you get more attempts for the guys who are your best shooters at a heavy volume?
Yeah. I think in a lot of ways too, teams have figured out the pick and roll. It just does not seem to be the option that it was for much of the year and the years ahead, prior to this one. And that's why you saw Braden Smith being aggressive. I think he had the first 4 shot attempts of the game for Purdue, but
He scored the first 7 points. I remember that.
Purdue will adapt to that, and it will find ways to get its offense back in the flow. In whatever way. You still have probably the best passer in college basketball on your team. So assist numbers probably not trending towards that record right now, but if you win games, I don't think anybody's worried about Bobby Hurley at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's always like, would it shock you if he had 12 at Nebraska? Like, and it's like a high scoring game. You know what I mean?
He had
like
16 against Houston last year.
Yeah, so I mean, like, he's always one game away from like a big number that corrects that short-term average. I think the Braden Smith breaking the assist record conversation is how many games does Purdue play conversation. So when they fix some of these team things, I think that extends the chances of him doing that. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for the questions. We really appreciate it. Join us. We will get together virtually Tuesday night. Sam will be out there eating runzas. I will be here in Indiana. And then we'll both be at Carver Hawkeye on Saturday for just a huge stretch of games here, man. Like, again, this is the stretch that determines how this regular season is probably ultimately going to be remembered. It's other things that set that up in some ways, like the Indiana loss kind of sets this up. But now here it is. How do you answer it? We'll find out. Thanks for joining us.